Today we're having a kōrero with a regular guest, the awesome Deb Rewiri, who's coming in from her bubble in the far north, up in Kororareka. Kia ora hoa.
Kia ora.
Deb is an experienced parent educator and facilitator for Brainwave Trust, and she's one of our skip whānau. Now, today's kaupapa is complex. We're asking what's going on in our human brain, and in particular, the brains of tamariki and rangatahi. But before we kick off, we want you to be part of this kōrero. We'd like you to share your comments or ideas with us during the session. In our Monday session about being at home with tamariki, we had some comments that we didn't get a chance to mention, but I wanted to share with you now. We heard from Renee, and she said what her and her whānau were doing. She said, in the day, we mahi māra, mahi kura in the garden and doing some schoolwork. And then in the afternoons and evenings, they play games, do some art, and have karaoke sessions. Well, that sounds awesome, Renee. And Lola also fed back to us about an interesting video clip that was going around the internet currently about helping young children understand the effects of soap on germs. And they used the pepper and soap demo, which is really cute. So do look that one up. Right, so if you know someone else who would be interested in tuning in to this kōrero, tag them in the comments. The brain, right? So if we know a little bit more about how the brain works, we might be able to better help our younger ones to stay calm, and also understand why some of our teenagers find it really hard staying in their bubble. So Deb, can you firstly just give us a little quick run through of the brain structure and how being in lockdown might affect our brains?
Kia ora Vic, kia ora koutou whānau o te motu. This is a korora, not a teddy bear, a korora. I just thought I'd show that with some of the skip messages on. So yeah, I'm going to simplify the brain. See, I've got a model of a brain here in my hand. It's not a real one, so rest assured. So I just thought just to simplify it, I'd show you how the brain comes together and organizes itself. So we're born basically with 80 billion brain cells, and the job of the brain is to help connect them all up. So the first part of the brain that's really online is what we call the brain stem, and that is the survival part of the brain. Okay, so if you think about survival, it's helping to pump blood through our veins and arteries, helping our lungs to breathe, so our heart to pump. We don't need to think about these things, it's automatic. But what's also housed in here is our survival response. So if we're under any trauma or stress to a high degree, what happens is this part comes into play, because remember, the brain is about survival. So we behave in one of three different ways: fight, flight, or freeze response. So that's where the 3 F's are housed. Okay, so that's the brain stem. Now, if we move up in here, this is what we call the limbic part of the brain, and it's the feeling part of the brain. That's where our emotional centers are housed, and also our memory centers. And that's why we get a real charge when we're remembering something. So it might be a piece of music, it might be a memory of somebody that was important to us, and we have this emotional reaction, and we think, like, where has that come from? Well, actually, it's come from here, the feeling part of the brain. The this part here, this wriggly part here, is what we call the cortex. And the cortex is what we call the thinking part of the brain. Okay, it helps us to plan things and to, you know, and to be more astute in what it is we're doing. But also this thinking part of the brain, and especially here in what we call the prefrontal cortex, this is the part of the brain, that's right, Vic. This is the part of the brain that can override and put a braking system on our feelings so that we can behave more appropriately. Okay, so we don't get a big charge. So if someone is misbehaving, if a child is misbehaving, if we're over the age of 28, we don't have to behave like a toddler because we have a fully myelinated prefrontal cortex. That means we can be calm and be more compassionate and empathetic towards the toddler. Now, there's one thing I want to say about the adolescent brain. The most activated part, because their brain is going through some changes, so the most activated part is their feelings, the emotional centers in the brain. And so what's happening is the brain is trying to grow and prepare them for adulthood and to grow some of these connections here to what we call myelinate them, so that this executive function overrides the limbic part of the brain. And so that is why adolescents have more of an emotional charge. But remember, we as adults don't need to, because we have a fully myelinated prefrontal cortex. Okay. Is that helpful?
Very helpful. The executive function, you're saying that's that area, the prefrontal cortex, isn't it? Where we do that problem solving and decision making. Yeah. Yep.
It has its function really is to dampen those strong feelings we may have. Right. So as adults, you know, we can cognitively think, oh, I can't take this personally. You know, that was one of the things I used to always forget about as a parent. I can't take it personally what they're saying to me right now. It's because, you know, they're just having what I call a verbal discharge. And so my role really was to calm the situation. And sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't.
Okay.
I really want to encourage parents to be kind to yourself. You know, we're going through unprecedented times at this current moment in time. A lot of us are dealing with grief, and I don't mean, you know, it could be grief that someone has died and we can't be with them, but grief in terms of we don't know when actually we're going to you know, downgrade into a level 3 or what that might look like. We don't, there's a lot of things that we don't know. So it's out of our control. So really the main thing is to get start thinking about how do we make this bubble that we're in more sustainable for us, for our own whānau.
Right, for livable. We've got a couple of people messaging into us. We've got Tiki, kia ora Tiki, and we have Karen, Nancy from Lower Hutt, Sophie, so kia ora koutou, thank you for tuning in. That grief you talked about, Deb, loss, change, your brain can consider that those things are threats, can't they?
Oh, they can, and I mean, you know, they can be a threat in terms of what's happening here in our emotional centers. And it sort of has this cascade effect, you know, on us if we're not taking time out to actually be kind to ourselves and to think like I'm doing the best that I can as a parent and a role model for my children, but I also have to manage the hard stuff.
My own stuff, that's right.
Yeah.
So something came to my mind then, that prefrontal cortex. When we put our hand up here, sometimes, God help me. So it's actually not a bad idea when you're getting to that point where you think, I'm going to smash something.
Yeah.
Put your hand up here and remind yourself you've got that myelinated problem-solving, planning brain. And sometimes it's just the pausing, isn't it? The actual having the breath.
Yeah.
Getting to my good thinking brain and not letting my survival or my emotional brain take over.
That's right. And I think it's to become more responsive rather than reactive. Yes. So if we're reacting to a situation, we just tend to clash. Okay, so responding really means that, and sometimes I used to do this to myself, is like put my hand over my mouth so that I wouldn't automatically come in, like someone saying, blah, 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 but you blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, So we need to really listen more because we've got two of these, whakarongo and kōrero, just listen really. And what children are seeing, what we're demonstrating for tamariki and rangatahi is I have a preparedness to hear you. Yes, I'm going through my anxiety and stages of grief, which I have to manage in a way that actually fills my emotional bucket.
As well.
I can't fill somebody else's through an empty bucket. So I have to actually replenish mine.
And you can model, what you're saying is you can model calmness, even though sometimes you might not be feeling exactly calm. You might want to be saying things that are not going to be helpful. But if you can try and model calmness to your mokopuna. We've got a couple of questions here. We'll just mihi to our friends tuning in from Tokoroa, from Invercargill, from Martin, kia ora koutou. We've got a question here from Kylie. What are rangatahi main concerns that you've heard during the lockdown, during the isolation?
Some of the main concerns, I guess, for them is they've now lost the opportunity to actually fill their social, emotional bucket with their mates. They are, and I know that we're using the terminology of a bubble, but for some of them, they're thinking, I'm in lockdown, I can't get to the people that I usually hang with. And I know that they have, they have access to smartphones, they can text, they can, see each other on Skype, Zoom,
Use
whatever.
Use
social media. However, that our brains need other brains to actually connect with. And so it's that opportunity that they've lost to actually hang with their mates. And just imagine if some of them are in relationships, so they've got an adolescent romance with a partner and they can't get there. Like they've got, all these hormones are drawing down inside of them. And one of the fundamental things that adolescents are doing is actually moving away from parents and family and moving toward potential sexual partners. And it's sort of like, it's only one of the things that they're doing, but it's sort of like, which tribe do I belong to? Who are the people I want to hang with? And so that's been seriously, they can't do that anymore.
Restricted, that's right.
Restricted. That's what I want.
Younger children might be relishing in the time spent with mum and dad at home. But teenagers or rangatahi probably are least likely to be feeling that way. Trying to you know, the lucky ones who do have access to technology that they can connect with, you just feel, you know, the frustration for whānau being in that position with a young rangatahi in the house who just wants to get out. What about if you were on the other end of it and someone's busted out of their bubble, rangatahi's busted out of their bubble and come to your whare? Our responsibilities to give that message to them. It may be a hard message, but it's kind of one that we need to be quite firm about. Sorry, Deb, you know, you would normally come here and spend your day at our whare.
Yep.
But, you know, now we've got our nan here. We don't want to put her at any more risk. Okay.
So I think it's really important, like, you know, if we pick up on the 6 principles and think about the tree parent, or what we call the backbone parent, and I think, you know, we just have to expand it a little bit and think about some of the key messages that Jacinda's putting out. You know, stay in your bubble, be kind. You know, if we pick up on that theme of love and warmth, and it's really clear, like, what collapses adolescence really is the thing when we do shame and guilt on them. So it's not about guilt tripping them, but it's actually being really clear with them. It's not confronting them. It's not saying you did a really terrible thing. It's just saying, hey, buddy, you know, this can't happen, and this is why. And I think the key thing there is to do it in incremental steps. So if your rangatahi is spending a lot of time in their room on social media, then how do you do it as a whānau where they're involved in some of the tasks and everyday routines that you as a whānau are doing? And so one of those key things is, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And so it's like, you know, even if you get them out of the room and say, okay, for 5 minutes, you know, every, I don't know, for breakfast, lunch and tea, you are to come out and we are going to do this as a whānau. And if they say, what? Oh, yeah. Say 5 minutes. That's all we're asking.
Help us out.
Yeah, exactly. So what you're trying to do is guide them in a way where they can come on board. So you're not saying, and then what you can do is increase the time, because, you know, and it's not day by day, it's just a little bit at a time, so that they get used to, first and foremost, okay, like, I have to spend 5 minutes in with my whānau. Oh my gosh, that's the biggest punishment you can give me. But really, in a way, we want to make it something that is really important for them. And some of those other things that you could try in terms of like that talking and listening is to have like kōrero tahi. Like, you know, you do, you know, and for some of them, like for some of the adolescents, if they haven't had an environment or a whānau that has actually sat down and begun talking, I mean, for the adults to say, you know, this might seem unusual at the moment, but actually these are the times we're living in. So yeah, mum and dad are home together, what, you know, however the whānau is constructed. And so we're going to spend some time checking in with each other. Either pass a toko around, pass a pounamu, pass something, so that the person who is holding it knows it's their opportunity to have a say. Even if they say, nah, nothing to say.
No comment.
No comment.
Interesting post here, comment from James comes through. She said, maybe now is a great time to teach simple mindfulness techniques.
Sure. And, you know, again, take small steps. So if parents are modeling that, you know, in terms of the tree parent, you know, it's not do as I say, you know, watch me. This is what we're going to do today.
Yeah, we're gonna
and
try
actually doing these things helps us to calm, because we breathe in more fully from our diaphragm. So that actually helps to, oxygenate the brain, which is good for clearer thinking. The other thing too is encouraging quietness. We don't always have to be a whānau doing stuff.
Yeah.
There is time when we can actually embrace boredom and embrace just being, just helping children to play more independently, rather than routines are great. Routines are good because children know what's coming next.
Yeah.
But also having opportunities for them to have times of boredom or just being, is also actually what you're doing is helping them to hook into their creativity.
We've got just some. I know, sorry, that was the last one. I had another question. Sources. Well, just our skip resources. You mentioned the 6 principles. Skip 6 principles, which is a really key 6 things that build great relationships. We got a poster. I got one on the wall with my bubbles in the background there. Ngā tohu whānau, we call them in our whakatipu series. And that at the heart of it is love and warmth. And if we can just keep it as loving and kind as we can, even though we're stressed, keep bringing back to the breath, like you said, bring in their brain, oxygen to the brain, because it works better, doesn't it, when it's got plenty of oxygen? I'm just wondering about those listeners that are tuning in. Have you had a kōrero with your tamariki about COVID-19? You talk, Deb, about passing the tokotoko around and talking about having turns to share. Be interesting to see what actually parents are sharing with families, because that was one of the things we talked about too, and prep for this kōrero, about how much exposure we have. What's your thoughts there in terms of a neuroscience perspective?
Well, I think it's really important that parents become the editors. I mean, we don't need to be listening to, the news constantly. It's like, how do you filter that out? And in a way, explain it really simply, just some of those key messages. And so it's like, ruptures are inevitable, with the information overload. But actually building resilience with children is key in terms of thinking about what the routines are. So if I become the editor, it's like, yes, we're going through a hard time. Yes, we do have to stay in at home. You can't be seeing Nan at this time because we're trying to keep her safe. But it's okay, I'm here. And it's sort of like, once we model that behavior and say to, and we're adhering to the bubble, so that parents are not sort of skipping over to the neighbours to have a quick wine or whatever, that we're modelling this behaviour. What children begin to see is, okay, this is how important it is, but actually, from what mum and dad has said to me, I know that we're going to get through it. And I think that's the key message, is laying down with calm and quietness that we will get through this. This is a period of time that we will get through.
We've got a comment here from Trudy. She's saying, my youngest is struggling with the loss of his social side of life. And sometimes it might mean a phone call. We had a lovely little kōrero on our Monday set where a little boy was saying, I'm missing it's sad because I can't see my friends. And then he goes, but I can ring them, which I thought was cute. He was only a little fella. I can ring them. Of course you can. There's another comment here from Nancy. My oldest had a hissy fit this morning and stormed out again to his room after about 10 minutes. I checked in with him to see if he needed a hug, and expressed my understanding of the stress of this lockdown puts on him, and explained to stay away from social media for a bit. Yeah, just give himself a breather. Good on you, Nancy. I like the did you need a hug? I mean, most teenage boys are going to say, no, thank you. But
Yeah.
checking in is you modeling that connection where we can connect, where it's safe to connect.
Yeah, awesome.
From Kylie. Do you think this lockdown could cause lasting anxiety for children?
Again, I think it comes back to what we're modeling within our bubble. And as I said previously, the more anxious I am as a parent, and if I'm not getting external support, I heard on the news the other day that, a solo mum, she went shopping and she was turned away, from the shops because they said, no, you can't take your child in there. And she said, well, how am I supposed to manage this?
Yeah.
And so, her idea was like, well, maybe you need to, because I've got nobody at home that can actually watch in my bubble, that can watch my child. And I can't leave my child in a car, unattended on their own.
Yeah.
And so how am I going to manage this in a way that is, manageable for her? So I think it's managing all this stuff again. Yeah.
I mean, that makes me think of, older people are being allowed to go into the supermarkets before others, and how we have the car parks for elderly and for disabled people and for mums. That may be something that some of the supermarkets could consider. Just got another question here. We just want to reaffirm what we were talking about today in terms of the brain and how it copes in stressful situations. Welcome people who may have just tuned in. A question from Lorraine. Where do I find out about tree parents? Tree parents. What do you think?
Maybe you can help her, Vic.
Tree parents is a term that we use in our skip material for to describe the style of parenting that is solid, connected to the ground like a tree, but it's a little bit flexible. It blows in the breezes when tamariki and rangatahi especially push the parenting tree. It doesn't stay rigid like a rock may do, and it's not a washover like a tissue paper style parent, but it's more settled, firm, but flexible. So that's kind of where we need to be thinking actually at the moment. We need to be a bit more flexible. There may be more time that we let kids sit in front of the TV or on devices. Keeping them calm is probably a higher priority than it would normally be in our everyday situations. Do you agree?
I agree with you, Vic. And I think, stress happens with resilient people. It's just a normal function of being human. And it's like how we get through those stressful times is what we're actually modeling for children at this particular period of time.
Yeah.
So that's the key.
Developed brain.
Yeah. I wanted to talk about the 7 C's to help rangatahi. And, these have come out of some well-founded research that you could probably find online. But these 7 C's are really important and key. So competence, encouraging our rangatahi that they are actually competent beings through the things that they're doing. What that actually helps to do is build their confidence. So if we're giving them tasks and we're saying like, good job, you did that well. It's being really specific and clear to actually help boost their confidence. As I said, shame and guilt is something that really saps away at their own belief
and
of themselves.
Puts pressure on their brain, doesn't it?
It does. It sure does. That connection.
Sorry, we're just going to comment here from Nancy, Deb. She said, stay calm through getting out for some physical activity, which is a good suggestion. Other people, just be interested to know how other people are helping themselves to stay calm during this tricky time. We'd love to know what strategies they may be using. Your next C, Deb?
Pardon?
Sorry,
my next C, what did I get to? I got to confidence, connection, like that whole sense of being connected to the people that are in their bubble. Their character, their innate characteristic. So who are they? Are they a slow to warm person, or are they somebody that really is sociable? I heard on the news today that there's 1,000 students, obviously have very well-myelinated empathy that want to help, elderly people by delivering packages to them. So we know that is developing. It's not like, it isn't there. Of course it is. In terms of that, it's contribution. Yeah. Most of them want to contribute to what is happening right now, so they want to volunteer. I know that, one of my iwi down to whānau Apanui, they've set up the roadblocks, but they've also looked at other strategies where people that are inside the rohe area, can support and help too. Yeah. So coping and control is their ability to manage it. How do they manage it? They manage it by us being able to model for them, by us being there to actually support them in what they're going through. Again, I want to say, if they don't want to talk, then just spend some time connecting with them. Even if you both sit there in silence, what they're getting is a sense of presence. I use this term, I call it calm, and it's about connection, about us physically creating a presence with them. We're attuning to them, and we know that we're connecting in the limbic part of their brain, and we're mirroring their feelings so that they actually feel it. It's sort of like, right, you're unhappy. Suck it up, build a bridge, get over it. We're all going there too, bro. It's like, when you do that, you become really dismissive of what they're experiencing. So, that ability to calm that situation is really important. That getting out for physical activity, look, these hormones that we draw down in our brains, like endorphins, serotonin, oxytocin, dopamine, like endorphins. Pardon?
Are they your feel-good hormones?
They're the feel-good hormones. They actually come on down and make us feel good inside. Guess what? Here's how simple it is. Sunlight activates endorphins. Physical activity. Now, I won't go to the physical activity, especially if you have a romantic partner, of what you could be doing, but playfulness, laughing, singing, all these things are readily accessible. So maybe we need to turn off the news on TV and turn some music on and just be silly. Just start
whānau and have a karaoke night.
Yeah, exactly, or dance.
I'm aware that our time has moved along. Like you and I, we could probably talk neuroscience for another week. But I just want to thank our participants who've sent us some comments today and shared a little bit about what they're doing. It'd be great to continue to give those comments about how perhaps parents and whānau members are looking after themselves too, as well as their tamariki. Don't forget to check out our skip resources or the free raueme on skip.gov.nz. Also, there's some great stuff on the Etu whānau website, and It's Not Okay. They have some supportive information too. And also check out the Brainwave Trust website for more neuroscience-based info. And the COVID-19 official information there on the covid19.gov.nz site too. We're going to be back on Monday afternoon again when Mariah Tiepa is going to be having a kōrero with Tale Bryant. Tale is going to give us the rangatahi perspective, what it's like in level 4 life. So if you have any questions, particularly whānau who have teenagers, add them below, send them in, and tell us what you think. Let us know if this is helpful information. Yeah, I think I have no more comments I can see there. Deb, I just want to thank you so much for your time. And hopefully our time in the bubble it's showing that it's making a difference. So if we continue to use that thinking brain that we've got up here, even when that emotional brain is trying to take over, take some breaths, have a laugh, do some exercise, because it really will help your brain, and what you do, what you model, is what your tamariki will see. So Ehoa, thank you once again for your time and your information and knowledge. We'll see you next kōrero. Koutou mā. Mā te wā. Ka kite
from Korora.